Hi everybody, it's Nikki here and welcome to a bookish video. So today's video is in honour of Valentine's Day. We're going to be talking about books that I love or have loved in the past. So yeah, I'm just going to go straight into it and show you the books that I love and tell you the reasons why I love them. So let's start off with a book that I've shown a couple of times in recent videos. But I'm going to show it again because I love it. It is this little thing, and yeah, it's a picture book. It's a favourite tales book by Ladybird, and it is The Little Mermaid. And why do I love this book? Because, like I said before, this book was my introduction to mermaids. This book, this tiny, tiny little book that is literally about 36 pages, this was my discovery of mermaids and the reason why I fell in love with them. Beautiful artwork, as you can see. But yeah, this book was my introduction to mermaids. This book is the reason why I love mermaids so much. It's the reason why my whole persona is mermaids. I read this as a young child. I continued to read this into adolescence, and when I got back into books back in 2019, I knew that this was one of the books that I was going to hunt out and find and keep in my collection, because this is a very important book to me. This is me, this is who I am, and I love this book so much. It had to be this edition as well. Ladybird have done many sort of editions of their fairy tales and things like that, but it had to be this edition because this was the one I had. But yeah, I love it so much. It's my whole reason for loving mermaids. So what more can I say? I love mermaids. Now let's go on to some more current books. So this book is actually the second book in a duology, I want to say. I don't know if he's written any more in this series or in this line, but it's The Frozen Sea by Piers Torday, and this is the sequel to The Lost Magician, I want to say. Now this is the first time I ever felt the need to annotate and put in these sticky tabs for bits that I loved and really enjoyed, because I felt so compelled to. As I was reading this story, and this story takes inspiration from the Chronicles of Narnia, from the, I want to say, the Silver Chair story from the Chronicles of Narnia. And I don't know, like the first book, The Lost Magician, is very clearly The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, very clearly. And this one, I suppose, probably is going to be very similar to the Silver Chair in the Chronicles of Narnia, but I loved it. I haven't actually read the Silver Chair in the Chronicles of Narnia. That's one of the books I need to read. But I love this. I love this so much. We're following this young girl who goes to an old mysterious bookshop, and she discovers a book and she falls into the land of Folio. Sounds very much like The Never-Ending Story as well, to be fair. And I love that film. And she falls into this land of Folio, and she discovers that in this land there are two types of people. There are the creatures who are based from characters in books. So you've got like the three bears from Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You have little elves and little dragons and things like that. And then you have the robots, the robot people, and they're very very techy, very all about, you know, data and stuff like that. And the whole story is about, you know, whose brain is bigger, humans or computers? Because computers can hold an awful lot of imagination, but have we really tapped into what the human mind can really do? Especially when we think about our imagination. So I absolutely loved this story. I do want to reread it again and tab it even more. I actually read this before I read The Lost Magician. I didn't realise this was the second book. This is a beautiful book as well. Have this paper cover, and then you take off the cover and you have one of the robot people on there. I do want to reread it again because I feel like there's more I need to tab, because it was my first time tabbing a book. So yeah, I definitely want to reread it again and yeah, dive back into it. Now the next book was my favourite book of 2020, and that was Orion Lost by Alistair Chisholm. What can I say about this book? I read it at the perfect time. It really spoke to me. It really told me something I needed to hear, and that was, you are the master of your own ship. You can't control the sea around you and you can't control the weather, but what you can control is how you steer your ship through those stormy waters. And I needed to hear that, and that has helped me. That's helped my mental health to get through some difficult times in 2020. This book saved me, literally saved me. And when a book does that, when a book speaks to you like that, it becomes a massive firm favourite. I know a few people have read this and they've not got quite the vibe that I got from it, but maybe the message just isn't needed for them. So they read it as is, as a book. But for me, the message was needed. I needed to hear that. And so this book has a special place in my heart because of that. I will sing its praises forever and a day because I loved it so much. So yeah, I'm also going to get a tattoo. I don't know what of, but I'm going to get a tattoo that commemorates that message. So I always have it on me, so I can always remember it, because I need to. So that's that one. Now the next book, I'm going to hold up this book because this is the next book that I need to read. But I haven't read this particular one yet, but I have started the series. And that's Death Note by Tsugumi Oba, and the art is by Takeshi Obata. I probably butchered that, I don't know. But this is the black edition of the Death Note manga. And I have fallen in love with this manga. Who knew? Who knew that little old me would fall in love with manga? I'm the sort of person that used to wind a friend up because he used to love anime, and I used to say, oh, you like Japanese cartoons? And he was like, it's not cartoons. So I used to wind him up. But yeah, I absolutely love this. My husband's bought me the DVDs of the actual show. So I am waiting to finish the actual mangas before I go on and watch that, but I cannot wait to watch it and see it all come to life in front of me. I am completely fallen in love with this story. So we have these Shinigami gods who are responsible for creating death in this Japanese world, and they have what is called a death note, which is a notebook where if they write a name in there, then that person will die. Well, one of the Shinigami gods, called Rook, gets bored, and he drops his death note into the human world to see who will pick it up. And a young boy called Light picks it up, and he decides that he is going to use this death note, once he discovers what it can do, to rid the world of criminals. But turns out you can't do that. Because that makes you a criminal. So he is being hunted. And then we have Elle turn up, who's another very kind of like genius boy, who is helping the police to discover who this killer is. And it's just so intricate and so like, I know who it is. They don't. And it's really good seeing the intricacy of how this young boy called Light, who's very, very clever, how he manipulates the system. And yeah, I love it. I cannot wait to read book volume 5 and volume 6 to finish off the series. The black editions have 2 volumes in each one. So the actual single volumes. There are 12, but in the black editions, there is 6 books. And then you can get one massive bind up of all 12 books in one. But I went for the black editions because personally, if a series of books come in a black edition, I'm going to buy it because I love black. So yes, suits my soul. So yeah, I love this. The next book, I actually listened to the audiobook of this and loved it so much that I went out and bought a copy. So this is A History of Britain in 21 Women by Jenny Murray. And this is a non-fiction book. And the reason why I love this is because she literally tells us just a snippet, just a couple of pages per person, about the amazing things that these women have done in the face of adversity. So some of these women, you know, they were in a time when women were seen as, you know, chefs and mothers, and that's literally all they were. But they decided that they weren't just that. They were something more. They were something special. And they go on and change things. They do things that are spectacular and amazing and wonderful and powerful. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I've even got the history of the world in 21 Women by Jenny Murray as well. I've got both books because I love them both. And I just find them so amazing. You're not going to get a detailed, like, from birth to death kind of information about these women, but you're getting enough. You're getting enough to go, ooh, I wonder what else she did. And then you go off and then you discover more information about those people. It's a great place to start your information finding, if you know what I mean. And I just love it. It's a real great reference book. And yeah, power to the women. Women power. Love it. The next book. This was my best book of 2019. And it's a contemporary. Yeah, who knew? The Exact Opposite of Okay by Laura Stephen. Wow, what can I say? This book, please pick it up. Please pick it up. Please love it. So this is a story about a young girl who lives in America because although the author is British, she couldn't set the story in Britain because it's illegal in Britain to do what happens in this story. And that is that a nude picture of this young girl at school is leaked onto the internet. That's actually illegal here in the UK. You're not allowed to do that. You cannot put naked photos of someone on the internet without their permission. It's illegal here, but apparently in the US, it is still legal to do that in some states. Now, a lot of states have banned it, but some states have not. And that's the reason why Laura Stephen decided to put this book in an American setting rather than a UK setting, despite being a British author. So yeah, this young girl gets a nude photo leaked online and she is named all the horrible names under the sun that a young girl can be named in that situation. But the young lad that she's with doesn't get any of that. He doesn't get any hate. He's like revered as a god, you know. But just inequality, complete inequality. But what I loved most about this story was the humour. And it's told in a format of kind of like a diary, almost like she's writing it up as a diary. But the humour in this is so funny. There are moments where I literally just went, yep, that's me. Talk about seeing yourself in a book. I saw myself in here and I loved it. But then somewhere through the book, somewhere about the middle to the last 2/3, you suddenly realise that you've stopped laughing and things are starting to get serious now. Things are really starting to affect her mental health. And it was just, I felt it was a perfect depiction of how depression and anxiety can come on in a person. It's not like, bam, now you're depressed. It's not. It creeps slowly up on you until you suddenly realise, I'm not laughing anymore. And I thought that was beautifully done. So well done. I loved it so, so much. This story also looks at the idea of just because somebody fancies you or somebody likes you does not mean that you have to reciprocate. You know, how many times have we had unwanted attention from a boy and they do something really romantic, like bring us a bouquet of flowers and a box of chocolates, and everyone's like, oh, that's so adorable. And you're like, but it's not, because I don't want him to adore me. I don't want his attention. I don't like him like that. And then you're seen as the bad person because you don't reciprocate his feelings when he's being so nice. Especially when you've also told that particular person, please don't do this, I'm not interested. And yet they still do these big romantic gestures in public to try and force you to reciprocate the feelings. That's wrong. That's not allowed. You can't do that. And so this book addresses that as well. This one and the sequel, A Girl Called Shameless, really help towards realizing that women have a very different, we are treated differently to men in certain situations, but that doesn't stop us from being strong and powerful and standing up for our rights. And yeah, I absolutely loved it. This is feminism done perfectly. What more can I say? It needs a reread. I reread it twice. No, three times have I read it. I read it originally. I read the American copy because I have the American hardback. And then I reread this one again. So I read this 3 times in the last 2 years. That tells you how much I love it. Yeah. So The Exact Opposite of Okay by Laura Stevens. Read it. Love it. Just found some more books. Next book. Children of Blood and Bone by Tommy Adeyemi. Okay, so I recently read this. I think it was back in November, December time, and or October. And oh my God, I loved this story. This story is about, I think it's based on apartheid and the events that happened there. I really need to look into that more and see what actually happened in real life in the apartheid. But although it's kind of based on that sort of, it didn't interrupt in the story, and it was beautifully written. The African culture that you get in this, it was so beautiful. It was so beautifully written. I was so scared of reading this book because I thought, I'm not going to understand it. I'm not going to connect with it because it's a culture I know nothing about. But I didn't need to, because the author took my hand and led me through this story so easily, so beautifully, that I just stood back in awe and admired this. And the second book was just as amazing, and I cannot wait for the third book to come out because I'm going to snap that up so quickly. I am so annoyed that I didn't get the sprayed edges version from Waterstones when it was out. Because I was so scared of this book. I was so scared that I wouldn't connect with it. And this very nearly won my best book of 2020, but just missed out to Orion Lost. But the next book is not the actual book that I love, but I don't currently own the actual book that I love. So this is standing in its place. So this is Dawn by Virginia Andrews, or the new Virginia Andrews. And so basically, this is standing in for Flowers in the Attic because, yes, I love that book. And that was the start of my absolute adoration for Virginia Andrews writing. I used to collect Virginia Andrews books many years ago. I had a whole bookshelf of them. Now, Virginia Andrews used to write in like family sagas. So you would have different families. This one doesn't say it, but I believe this one is the Longchamp. No, the Cutler. This is the start of the Cutler family series, but the Flowers in the Attic is the doppelganger family series. And so basically she wrote kind of rags to riches stories and when are you happier, when you're poor but surrounded by love, or when you're rich and have nobody to love you and take care of you kind of stories. And I love that. I love that concept, and she wrote that concept so well. Now, we'll say that Flowers in the Attic has one of those tropes that nowadays I don't like, and that is incest. I'm a little uncomfortable with it. But in Flowers in the Attic, I didn't mind it. I loved it. I loved the whole story as a whole. So I don't currently own Flowers in the Attic, but I would like to. So it is a book that is on my radar. I'm just trying to find a nice copy of it. I've seen the black and white version copy of it, but I like these type ones, that the old-fashioned ones that she had, because those were the ones that I used to collect. So I'm trying to find one of those rather than the black and white version that is available, I think, on Amazon. But yeah, I think I'm going to have to try and find it secondhand somewhere. But yeah, I absolutely love Virginia Andrews' writing in Flowers in the Attic and some of the other books that I read from her. I haven't read Dawn, that's why it's on my shelves now. But yeah, absolutely love these books. Next book I want to talk about is the start of a trilogy. So I'm just going to show you the first book, and this is Flint and Silver by John Drake. Now, this is like a prequel to Treasure Island. It says before it was Treasure Island, it was Captain Flint's Island. So apparently John Drake read Treasure Island and had many questions. Like, who was Captain Flint? Why did Long John Silver only have one leg? You know, why was this treasure buried on an island and then forgotten where it was, that everybody is seeking it? You know, so many questions. But he couldn't ask the author because Robert Louis Stevenson, who wrote Treasure Island, has long since passed. So John Drake took it upon himself to write the answers to the questions that he had about Treasure Island. And so this is like a prequel to Treasure Island. And oh my goodness, I loved it. Who knew I would be a fan of pirate stories? I mean, it kind of goes hand in hand with mermaids and pirates. They're kind of, you know, along the same storylines kind of thing. But oh my God, I love a good pirate story. And you know what? I read these before I read Treasure Island. And once I read Treasure Island, I suddenly realised where all the holes in that story were. But they were already filled for me because I'd already read this trilogy. So I knew all the answers. And when certain things were coming up in Treasure Island, I was like, oh, that's where so-and-so did that. It was brilliant. I loved it. I definitely need to reread this again in the future. Love this trilogy. Yeah, pick it up. It's brilliant. If you like pirate stories, if you love Treasure Island, read this. It's brilliant. Flint and Silver by John Drake. First in a trilogy. The next book I want to talk about is my beautiful copy of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. Now, not this book because I only recently purchased these last year, but The Hobbit was a book that I was reading when my eldest daughter was just a toddler, and I was really getting into it and I really enjoyed it. It's a really good story. Like, this is fantasy at its finest, in my humble opinion anyway. You might not think that. But I was hooked on this story. And when it came to bedtime, to read a bedtime story to my daughter, I didn't want to put this book down. So I started to read The Hobbit to her. Now, she really enjoyed that. She really enjoyed me putting on the different voices and sound effects and stuff like that. She loved it. So I read The Hobbit to my 2-year-old daughter. So yes, this story always has a special place in my heart because of that memory. I love it. I find it just so, it's just pure fantasy. When I think of fantasy, this is what I think of. It has its place in history for a reason, because it's good. And I know there are a lot of new authors coming up nowadays that are writing even better pieces, I suppose. But this is classic. This is classic fantasy, and I cannot wait to reread these again. I really, really want to. These are illustrated by the same illustrator who did the concept art for the movies. So yeah, I mean, look at this artwork in here. It's just so stunning, and I love this story. I love the Lord of the Rings trilogy as well. I'm talking about the whole 4-book concept of the Lord of the Rings. I love it. It's so beautiful. Okay, so the next book is classic that I recently discovered that I loved. It's Dracula. I mean, Dracula. It's just... I've watched a few films of Dracula. This is the book. Not as good as the book. This story is just phenomenal. This is one of the Penguin classics, cloth-bound classics. So I have a couple of copies of Dracula because I love it so much. Written by Bram Stoker, if you didn't know. But I just love the atmosphere of this, the intrigue and the darkness of this. It talks to my dark soul. I might talk about mermaids and pretty things all the time, but actually deep inside me there's a little black heart. And I love this story. Like just the darkness of it, and this idea of being a you know, lady of the night, and you know, with Dracula's brides and stuff. I love it. I love it so much. And I didn't know that Van Helsing was part of this story either. I thought he was a separate part of a different story. But yeah, Van Helsing is part of this as well, and that was quite a shock to me when I read it. But oh, the atmosphere of this just pulls me in and grabs hold of me. And I started listening to this on audiobook, and I put down whatever I was doing at the time, and I just sat and listened to the audiobook because I was just so entranced by it. I love it so much. That's why I have about 5 copies of a book now. So yeah, I love me some Dracula. And another book that I have a couple of copies of is Throne of Glass. Now, it's not particularly Throne of Glass that I particularly love, but the series I love. It's written by Sarah J. Maas. This is the special edition hardback cover of the first book, Throne of Glass. And I got the box set, the paperback box set as well. But I originally started reading this series through my local library. Was getting the book out once a month, reading it. Next month, get out the next book. And at the beginning of the series, I was like, yeah, this is quite a good series. I'm enjoying this, yes, but I will continue to just get the books from the library. About halfway through the series, I was like, okay, this is getting really good now. I would like to own my own copies, but probably sometime in the future, you know? And then I got to the last book, which is, I forget what it's called now. But I got to the last book, and I finished that, and I was like, okay, going on to Amazon right now, I'm purchasing a copy because I loved it. It broke me. I loved it. I love this series. It's worth a reread. I know there is a read-along going along at the moment, but I'm so busy doing other stuff right now, and I need to catch up, and I don't have time to catch up, so I'm not going to read along with it at the moment. But I am going to be reading this again in the future. That's why I bought my own copies, so I could do that. So yeah, absolutely love this series. And the final book that I am going to talk about today, in books that I love, like I really love these books, and I would reread these books over and over again. This book, you will see that I have read this book over and over again. And if I was to say what was my favourite book ever, that I ever read, the one that I would read and reread and read over and over again, it's got to be this one. It's Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. I mean, look how battered she is. Like, she's got curved edges, the plastic at the front is coming off, she's yellowed, she has a broken spine. I mean, she is battered. And you know the reason why? Because I've had this for ever. When did this come out? 2012. So I've had this for 8 years. And I have read this, reread this, read it again. Passed it to a friend, got her to read it. And yeah, loved it. This is the first book in the start of a 3-book series, and then a 4th book, which was kind of like an add-on after. So you have Uglies, Pretties and Specials, and then the add-on book was called Extras. And this is a story set in a world, a futuristic world, where you are considered ugly until the age of 16, and then at the age of 16 you are given plastic surgery to make you pretty, so that everybody is of equal sitting. You know how we all strive to be beautiful, we all think my nose is a little bit crooked, or you know, my ears are a bit lopsided, or you know, I have small eyes and I really want big ones, you know. And so in this world, the authorities do plastic surgery on you, like an operation on you to make you pretty at the age of 16. And our main protagonist, called Tally, she cannot wait. She can't wait to become a pretty. Her best friend has already been made one because his birthday was a few months before hers. So she is eagerly anticipating. She's so close, she can feel it. And then she meets someone who talks about a refuge away from this city, this world where these operations are being done. And in this refuge are people who have opted out of the operation. So they have grown up ugly, and they've grown up natural, in a natural state. And this young girl tells Tally that she's going to run away and she's going to join this refuge, and that Tally should come with her. And Tally's kind of like, no, I want to be a pretty. But then Tally gets caught doing something she shouldn't. And then she is tasked to find this refuge and pretend that she is seeking like sanctuary with them, and then lead the authorities to this refuge so they can close it down. And so Tally makes her way to this refuge and discovers that maybe becoming pretty isn't all it's cracked up to be after all. I love this story. I love it so much. Yes. And I have heard that Netflix are going to be bringing out the films. Like a film or a series based on the Uglies story. And I cannot wait. They better not mess this up. Like, Netflix have a tendency, they either do a really great adaptation or they do a really bad one. They never do an in-between one. And I'm really hoping that they do a really good adaptation of this book, because if they do it wrong, I'm going to be so annoyed. But yeah, so it's coming out on Netflix. I don't know when. It was only just mentioned back end of 2020, but I am so excited for this. I would like to read more of Scott Westerfeld's stories. He has another series called Imposter, I think, and I'd love to pick that up. I just haven't. It's in my wish list, but I haven't picked it up as of yet. But yeah, this was the reason why I found this book was I'd read The Hunger Games and really loved that dystopian world, this crazy idea of these kids fighting for their lives to make up for the rebellion. And when I finished that trilogy, it left a hole. There was a hole that I needed to fill. And so I discovered this and I read this, and it not just filled that hole, but it kept that hole filled for years and years and years. I never needed to look for anything else. I'd found what I was looking for and I didn't need to look anywhere else. I love this series so very, very much. And yeah, I think it's due a reread. I think because, yes, I think I did read Uglies last year. But then I didn't move on to Pretties or Specials. I just reread the first one and I listened to it on audiobook as well. So yeah, I think it's definitely due a reread, and God bless it. It's battered, but I love this copy and I would never replace it. This is my original copy, and it's probably one of the oldest books I own, other than my Chronicles of Narnia book. But yeah, I love it. Even some of the pages are bent over. Look at that. Even some of the corners are bent. Not that I do that on purpose. I don't do that. I don't turn corners. But obviously, you know, when a book's this old, some of the corners get bent. So yeah, love this book. So that is it. That is my books that I love in honour of Valentine's Day. So what books do you love? What books do you read over and over and over again and you never get tired of that story? Let me know in the comment section down below. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!